kindness of this group. People walking up with granola. That is fantastic.
Piece of chocolate.
Thank you. That reminds me, I should announce on Palm Sunday afterwards, we're having lunch here. We're going to have sandwiches and chips, and then you guys bring side dishes afterwards. They all have to be palm-based. That's not true. But that should be a great time, so put that on your calendar. So here's the deal, though. I got to admit, anybody else raised in an ingredients home? Where, when I grew up, that's what we had in our home. So if you get hungry in the middle of the night, rarely were there, like, the only things that were kind of, you could just eat right then were cereal. And my folks, when my brother and I, I'm sorry, I'm going to make this quick. My brother is 3 years older than me. I am 6 years older than my next sibling, my sister, and then 9 years before the baby. So they had two different families. And the family I grew up in had grape nuts and shredded wheat for cereal. And never had anything, if you wanted a snack, it was, you either made something, popcorn or something. This is back in the Stone Ages when you had to shake a thing for popcorn, and or make a sandwich, right? But everything else was ingredients. You couldn't come up and like, man, I just want a handful of flour. That is delicious. Or some, like, pasta. Chew on some spaghetti. So that was the home I grew up in. Anytime there were, like, prepackaged, like, we didn't do Twinkies, but like we did Zingers. You ever hear what Zingers are? Now I am getting actually hungry. It's now gone beyond illustration. But the point is, that was gone in like a minute. Like they were devoured because it was, first come, first serve, and there were a lot of elbows thrown. When I came home from my first year of college, something changed in my home. I opened the pantry door and there was sugar-frosted honey bombs in the cabinet, and there were, cereal. I think it was literally like Rainbow Bright cereal or something weird like that, some kind of toy tie-in. My sisters changed my parents when it came to snacks. There was like actual snack foods that you could just reach in that weren't just ingredients. And because of that, and this is where, if my mom watches this, I'm sorry, I am blaming you for this. Because of that, I want snacks immediately. When I want to eat, I want something in a wrapper that I can just eat. Now, I will say this. Here's what's changed. In the last few years, since COVID, I've kind of begun to cook. I'm realizing the fun of actually making something. And the difference is this. When you make it, and it's something that's pretty good, decent for you, something at least that's not processed and packaged, it actually, satisfies you. It actually fills you up. You're actually pleased when you eat it. When you have a zinger, there's a little bit of guilt. You get a good zinger of sugar, and also a little bit of baseline shame, right? So it is much better to eat something good, especially when you're hungry. So our first point, we want to be talking about how God satisfies us. When we are hungry, let's make sure we're hungry for the right stuff. And eat stuff that is good. And we have all the ingredients to have what is good. We're talking about the Beatitudes. We're kind of doing the next three. Like I said, I don't think there's a really, I've read a bunch of different stuff recently, and I don't think they're like in any order or any divisions, but I'm just breaking them down by threes to make it easy for us. So the next three that we're talking about, though, and I have to admit, most of the times I've studied this, and most of the times I've read about it, I focus on the first part of each of these Beatitudes, each part of these couplets, each part of these dualities, the blessing, who is blessing, and I kind of gloss over the blessing we receive. And so today I want to focus, at least on these three, on the blessings that we receive. So the first blessing that we receive, the first way we know we're blessed, is that our hunger is satisfied. Our hunger is satisfied. We're looking at Matthew 5, verse 6. It says this, God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. Other translations translate that word justice as righteousness, and they're kind of interchangeable in this context. I told you this before, when I studied political theory in college, that was our understanding. Justice is the right result for the right action. So when something is just, it is right. It is the right response, the right result. And we seem to understand as Jesus is talking, he seems to be talking about both ideas. That there's this personal idea that he seems to be talking about people who hunger for righteousness, people who hunger for justice, are people who are worried about themselves, that they themselves long for and they are eager to be declared righteous before God, that they want to be righteous themselves and conform to the will of God. And there's also this idea of community. There's also this idea of society, this idea of a larger group that Jesus also is describing those who are hungry to see righteousness win. That's justice. They want to see justice in the world for others. They long for justice to win, to prevail. They want right to overcome wrong. So we want to be righteous in ourselves. We want to be righteous in conforming to what God has for us. And at the same time, we want to see evil abolished from the world. I like how it's described that hunger and thirst is how we're motivated to be part of the kingdom of heaven. That if we really want to be righteous before God, and if we really want to see justice, we need to have the same level of motivation as when we're hungry and thirsty. When we're hungry, the first thing about hunger and thirst is recognizing that we're hungry and thirsty. You can't escape it. Once you realize you're hungry, can you think about anything else? No. Once you realize, especially once you realize you're thirsty, that is fantastic. It'll make you suffer. When we're thirsty, you can't think about anything else but a drink of water. We recognize that we have need. We recognize that we are lacking. We are lacking righteousness, and we see that there is injustice in the world. We have a need in ourselves. We have an insatiable longing. People who hunger and thirst after righteousness and after justice have an insatiable longing to be right in the center of God's will. It also implies more than just an acknowledgement or wanting. It implies action. When I was hungry as a kid, I would go graze in the kitchen. Right? We had a basement. I would emerge from the basement and I would begin to hunt. I was a hunter-gatherer in the kitchen and finding whatever I could eat. And it was because I had to do something for it. In the same way today, when we're hungry, we need to act on it. We need to do something about that hunger. It implies more than just desire, it implies action. And we become the more hungry and the more thirsty we are, the more desperate we are to fulfill that need. And so if we're hungry and thirsty for God, for righteousness, for justice, we want to, of course, have the right ingredients. We want to hunger and thirst for justice and righteousness as God defines it. And how did Jesus say what was righteousness, what was right, what was most important? It was to love and to care for those that he loved and cared for. Right? To love God and to love people. All people, all the time. And then our goal is to see the removal of evil. The removal of evil in our own souls and the mitigation and the removal from evil in the world. The Lord's Prayer says this, right? On earth as it is in heaven. That's what hungering and thirsting for righteousness and justice is. There's this connection between justice and righteousness. Justice and righteousness, when we think about it on a personal and a community level, this is where they intersect. These things intersect when we are craving the elimination of evil and the will of God to be enacted and lived and to be present in our lives and in the world. The total elimination of evil and oppression from the earth and in ourselves. So if we're really feeling that, we should move towards working towards being satisfied by justice and righteousness. Not just in our own soul, not just not being bad. I think we've dumbed down righteousness to just not being bad, not sinning. But it's so much more. We need to work for the justice and liberation of oppressed and exploited. John Wesley said there's no holiness without social holiness. We are holy. We work on our own holiness so that we can spread that to those around us. It's more than just following rules. It's loving God and loving like God. Our righteousness is more than us just not sinning. It's about spreading the love of God and the care that God has for people to those around us. That is justice. And when we actually begin to experience it, when we actually begin to experience that level of righteousness, when we actually begin to experience helping others who need justice, then we have that craving begin to be satisfied. Our craving is satisfied the way it's supposed to be. According to God, as He explained, it's realized. We get a little window in those moments when we begin to recognize and remove evil from our life, and when we go and help others, when we provide justice and we work for justice for those people around us, we begin to have a little moment, a little window of what that's going to be like to be in the presence of God, to be completely satisfied and completely filled by God. When we begin to experience righteousness and justice, personally we realize it's an old word, but it works. We're saved. We're saved. Our evil is covered and removed from us, and we will be in the presence of God in perfection and eternity. But beyond just that, we stop there so often, and I think that's where this word, this idea of justice and righteousness being together, and hunger and thirsting, is also in community, that understanding that God is just as committed to a just and righteous world. That we need to not only understand that I am saved, then we need to work to saving others. And not just by getting them to believe the right thing, but by caring for them and offering real justice and real righteousness. By removing evil. I got to admit, there are Christians who say that, the social gospel is wrong. And again, I don't want to get into all the nuance of that, but it's very clear that we're to work for justice. How do we care for something? There is value in just caring for somebody. Providing help for the oppressed and the exploited. We're supposed to care and work for justice, and that will satisfy us. It would be like when we begin to experience really being hungry for and really wanting kale. Right? It's good for you. And really wanting it and having kale and finally experiencing, yes, this is what's good. And I will admit, obviously, I struggle with food issues. And I go to the Wednesday meeting. By the way, little announcement. We still have our Life Path recovery meetings, Wednesdays at 5:30 at West Sound Academy. And these days, I go to talk about food. That's my stuff. That's where I've turned. And you know what? I am excited for the day. The harder I work and the more I work for it, I become satisfied by stuff that is better and don't want stuff that is not good. And we want to be hungry for the right things, for righteousness, to be like God, to be like Jesus, to be satisfied by Him, and to experience the fulfillment and the satisfaction of not only seeing us right in the center of God's will for us right now, but also spreading that and offering justice to those around us. I put a note for myself in here. It said, don't get sidetracked by this metaphor. Because I could go on, so I'm going to skip ahead. We can be satisfied, and we can be really satisfied now. We can be blessed right now. We don't have to wait to be blessed. Those of us who are hungering and thirsting, even if it's just acknowledging that we wish it was better, that means we are blessed. We will be satisfied by God. We can experience that now, and we experience that ultimately in eternity. So just a couple of thoughts. How do we get there? I think we need to change our desire. I need to not want fast food and zingers. I need to want kale. I want to desire so much to be in the center of God that we are moved, that I am moved to action. Moved in ways to change my life, to eliminate evil and to pursue God. And moved in ways to love people around me and care for them and offer justice to them. That I'm moved to act and I'm willing to change. And then seek real righteousness and real justice for others in the world around me. Even if it's difficult, even if it's complicated, even if I'm not sure how it's going to work out. That needs to be my priority. I need to want that so much that it is like a hunger. It is like a thirst. What's amazing about this is that sometimes we read here this hungering and thirsting for righteousness seems to show us in justice being the right response for the right action. Often often sometimes means punishment. We realize our own weakness, and we realize justice would be punishment. And yet we're saved, and yet we'll be satisfied, because the right response to unrighteousness, according to God, is mercy. Justice requires mercy as we face God, and that's our second beatitude today. Matthew 5, verse 7, mercy is shown. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. So as we understand how Jesus thought of justice and righteousness, it requires us to understand mercy. As we understand that there is evil in me and that there is evil in the world, and as I work towards that, as I work to connect with God and I want to hunger for the right stuff, we understand that is a process, and I am not here now, and I do have hunger, and I do have thirst, and I want the world to be different, and I want to be different. And rather than shaming myself, and rather than throwing my hands up and giving up, I need to continue to pursue that. And the hope that we have is because God is merciful. And we need to understand what Jesus thought of mercy. Mercy involves a lot of ideas, the idea of forgiveness, of withholding punishment. The punishment justice would demand being withheld. When we understand what God has offered us, when we understand the mercy that has been given to us, this enables us to offer that mercy to others around us. Jesus reminds us that God's mercy enables us, I say this, especially Christians, but people in general, not just Christians, quickly we become cold, stone-hearted avengers instead of people who offer mercy. We need to exercise mercy because God has given us mercy. I think sometimes we're so worried about whether we're right or not that we forget to just experience and accept and be thankful for the mercy that God has given us. We can trust in a love from God, and we can trust those around us because we know God has loved us. And that He self-sacrificed to meet the demands of justice and allows us to continue to love and work and care. Because we can trust the love from and for God that meets that need for justice, we can move beyond the limits of normal courtroom justice and offer real mercy. As we are recipients of mercy, we can become agents of mercy. Not just focusing on our rights, not just focusing on what this should be, and not just focusing on what I need, but focusing on how we can care for and forgive and help others. We need to make sure we're not just all worried about eye for an eye and vengeance, that we are worried about spreading the mercy of God rather than condemnation. And that we don't do it condescendingly. I thought about this so often. We can be so condescending that we reach down from a superior moral and ethical place because we know what's right. And it certainly does not feel like love when we do that. We're liberated from legalism. We're liberated from self-righteousness, which is antithetical to mercy. And we are self-righteous. We're the opposite of merciful, because why would we need mercy? I'm great. We're liberated from that we can act compassionately, that we can act with forgiveness and generosity, with no expectation of return to the people around us. And this helps us remain amazed and grateful and thankful for the mercy that we have received from God. As we begin to practice that and we begin to be merciful to those around us, it is a constant reminder to us, it should be a constant reminder to us of how much we have been forgiven. And again, both now and in eternity. The world and ourselves have evil. And the beauty of Jesus' mission and His message and His life, that punishment, the consequence of our evil and the consequence of the world can be withheld and expunged because of God's love and His sacrifice for us. When we understand that and we begin to live that, we begin to experience, again, this love and that mercy, not only here, but in eternity. We experience mercy every day, and we need to pass that on. I think we experience it most when we pass it on, when we offer mercy to somebody else. I have mercy that I experience from God every day. I am not a good driver. It's hard for a man to admit that. I do not park well. So fortunately, I've got a big truck, so that just expands the problem. I am the one that you get so irritated at in the parking lot. For two reasons. One, if I'm in a hurry, you can't get into your car, probably. You may have had to climb through a sunroof because of the way I park. Or I'm the one to get it right and has to do it like 6 times. I mean, no, I gotta back up. Gotta back up. Also, I get distracted when I drive. Or sometimes I'm just not thinking right. Or sometimes I have something in my mind, like I'm gonna turn left, it's a left, it's a left, it's a left, but for some reason my brain turns right. And then I have to swerve around. Every time that happens, I should be dead. The reality is somebody should come careening down the road and hit me because I did something stupid. Every time I hit those little bumps on the side of the freeway, I should be plunging into a bridge abutment. But God has had mercy on me. He has allowed me to not have too many wrecks. Sorry. I had a few. He has allowed me to not have all the times that something horrible should have happened. It didn't. I watched a video just this morning. Was trying to find something I thought I'd show it, but the technology was beyond me. But a woman was walking across the street talking to a friend and not paying attention to where they were going, and just literally walked straight into the side of a truck speeding down the road. And just bumped into it and wasn't knocked over. Somehow she just bumped. And I thought, that is mercy. We experience little mercy every day. And we need to pass that on. We experience little mercies every day when the people around us love us. We experience little mercies every day when we sit down and eat. Why do we pray before we eat? Because we have just another moment that we need to thank God that we have what we need for that day in that moment. There are so many things, not just things that we're grateful for, but times that we should have received punishment and we didn't. There should have been a consequence and there wasn't, because God has mercy on us every day. So, as we apply this, think about this. If your life is not working out, if nothing ever seems to go your way, if you just need a break, we all experience that. Times when we think it's just not fair. I can't handle one more thing if I spill coffee on both shirts. It's because we are broken and it's a broken world and we're around other broken people. It takes mercy to live as a broken person around other broken people in a broken world. If we want to experience mercy, if we want to know that the best way to experience mercy, Jesus says, is to go offer it to somebody else. Become aware of how much we have received every single day. Big, eternal soul mercy. And also, I didn't get hit by a truck today mercy. And offer that to the people around us. If we want to experience more of His mercy, begin by looking for His mercy and then remembering that it exists and then passing it on. Then give mercy. If we're going, I just need a break in my life, give a break to somebody else. Forgive. Don't seek revenge. Be part of that blessing. Be part of somebody else experiencing mercy without demanding that they know about it or are thankful for it or give you any credit. Allow for failure from the people around you. Yes, boundaries. I completely agree. There are times, of course, that we need to understand that there is, I'm not talking every single time, but we need to be part of helping others overcome the pain of this broken world by offering mercy. Give somebody else a break. Nothing helps me understand how much I am forgiven than when I get the opportunity to forgive somebody else. And this reminds us of the mercy we receive daily. In the middle of that, though, as we try and deal with the evil in our own lives and evil in the world, as we want to be righteous people who offer justice, and we understand the only way that we continue to exist in a world that is in that tension is because of the mercy and grace of God, that we then get the privilege of passing on to somebody else, is that we will be able to see God. We will be able to see God. God will be seen. Matthew 5:9. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. You may have, and I admit, I may have understood purity in this context, and often it was taught as freedom from sin or freedom from moral failure, primarily all sorts of things in this world. And I think even the people Jesus was talking to probably would have seen it at least some way, that maybe he was talking about following the law of Moses or the moral code, or what the teachers had told them, that you have to follow all these rules to be pure. We make it this, if that's what we think it is, and I don't think this is what Jesus is teaching, but if that's become our goal, if that's what we're trying to do by never sinning, we do a couple of things. We either lower the bar to where we're capable and we can kind of pretend like we're pure. We make a list of acceptable sins and make a list of those that we don't do, and as long as we don't do those, and then when we do break those rules that we've set for ourselves, then we kind of find ways to excuse it, or we give up. Usually when we try and make that our goal, purity, the complete absence of sin, the complete absence of failure, we lie to ourselves, and it's a mix of selecting what we're capable of and what we don't get caught for, and lowering the bar to only those things that are external and observable. But I think Jesus was talking about something else. Jesus was focusing so much more on the heart, the context of the Beatitudes. He's talking about the inner man, the heart of who we are, the inside. He was talking about the hearts of his listeners. Instead of their ability to maintain the rituals and maintain the rules and maintain the law, he preached against often obeying the law in action only. We're going to go on and see all sorts of times where he's saying, that's not purity. Doing what is observable isn't the only thing. But what he did teach is that we need to reach out and experience and pass on the true love of God. Purity at its most clear and original meaning of this refers to the idea of something being unmixed or unified or consistent. Like gold, purifying gold, taking all of the pollutants out of it. Undivided, uncompromised. Singleness of purpose. Uncontaminated motivation. One guy said, I like that. Unwavering in purpose. Purity means that's the only thing in the heart. That's the only thing we desire. The one thing that we desire is God. A pure heart, those with a pure heart are those who are completely and undivided in their loyalty toward God and his will. One of the authors wrote that there is no alloy. I love that idea. An alloy is when you mix metals. And they're saying that purity is not allowing any other pollutant, not allowing anything else, not making an alloy with God and something else. God promises that when the kingdom of heaven arrives, those who are pure in their devotion, those who are singular in their devotion to God, that is all they want. That's what they hunger and thirst for. That's why they experience righteousness and justice. That's what they want. When that happens, when the kingdom of God happens, they will actually see God. And think about the people sitting there listening to Jesus. Because the Jews knew their history. What happened when people saw God? They were destroyed. They had to cover their face. They couldn't look at him. Just, the metaphor of God walking by, and the afterglow of God was enough to blind and almost kill people. And he's saying, look, if you are singularly devoted, if you are pure in your love for me, if you are pursuing God, you will actually be able to see God face to face. He's saying, those of you who are pure, those of you who are devoted to God, when you get there, you will see him. That's the blessing. That's the hope. that we will have a real face-to-face connection with God. And again, I don't believe it's just in the future. I don't just think it's in eternity. I think there's a reality that we will experience God as we live now. That we can have a relationship and an understanding and an overwhelming empowerment by God that is like a face-to-face. As we are pure in our devotion to loving Him, that we'll be more and more able to experience Him. Seeing God in eternity and as a source of insight right now. That we will understand and know God even now. So we need to be pure. We need to be completely devoted to seeing God and allowing that insight, allowing that connection to motivate us and help us with as we hope for the future. And this gives us the promise of eternity. So if you're experiencing distance from God, if my efforts to be connected, if there's ever those times where I just feel like I'm distant from God, and I experience them, and I'll tell you what, I think Restored Church is unique, and that we have a lot of folks who've come through over the years that's why they come here. That's why they've been part of this family, that we understand that, and we assume it, to be honest, that we're going to go through those times, and that may be overwhelming. As we experience those times, and all the things that we've tried, all the remedies fall flat time and time again, that I'm going to read more scripture, I'm going to pray harder, I'm going to go to more services, I'm going to listen to more Christian music, whatever it is, I'm going to be part of more small groups. That as we understand that those efforts, they don't seem to connect, what we do need to understand is maybe getting rid of all that activity, maybe getting rid of all that theory, and just have a singular purpose of wanting to connect with God and allowing Him to connect with us. Maybe acknowledging the alloys that we have made. Maybe understanding the impurities that we have tried to add to our relationship with God. What have I added to my pure love for God and who He is that makes it impure? Have I added religion, money, power, God as I wish He was, anger at God, fear? So much to talk about, so much insight here that I don't want to go beyond that. I just want us to maybe today focus on those three little things. We're going to do communion in just a moment. The guys are going to come up and we're going to do communion. But I want us to reflect on this. Do I hunger and thirst to remove evil from my life and to see evil removed from the world around me? To see real justice? Do I experience and am thankful for and remember the mercy that has been given to me every day? And because of that, offer mercy to those around me? And then, am I willing to only and completely and purely focus on God? Want that to be my ultimate answer. Not sinless perfection, but ultimate commitment to God. How do we know if we're pure enough? How do we know if we're right enough? How do we know if we believe all the right stuff? If I have acted good enough to actually be one of those who gets to see the face of God? The reality is that just needs to be our goal. That needs to be our purpose. That we want to follow God. That we pursue Him as He is. That we experience the moments of His presence and connection. But that is the goal, and that is the light of our life. When we do communion today, I want you to reflect on that. So let's just take a moment. I want you to take a moment to examine yourselves. And again, I'm not asking you today. Usually, sometimes we look for where am I sinning, and of course, if there are major roadblocks, if there are hindrances to your relationship with God, if there are things in your life that you know are evil, that you have not acknowledged or confessed before God, absolutely. But I want you today to focus on how is my devotion to God? What have I mixed with it? What am I requiring of God? What do I want God to do to really give me pure commitment to Him? Or have I added some of my own desires rather than just His? Ask yourself, do you see God? Are there moments in your life? I do believe God is gracious and gives us moments will we have connection. Even in a fallen world, even as a fallen person, even with broken other people around us, there are moments that he gives us that time where we know that he is with us. That even in our current state and circumstance, that he is the light and presence of our lives. So let me pray. And then while the guys are playing, I would like you to concentrate and reflect on those three things. God, thank you that you have offered us grace, you have offered us mercy, and you have offered us a way to know you. And God, no matter what circumstance we're in, we know that we are blessed. God, we know that our hunger for you will be satisfied because you love us and you will be with us. God, we know that we experience mercy because you've loved us in spite of ourselves. Help us to offer that to others and experience even more mercy, to expand that in the world, to have other people know you better. And God, as we do that, help that be our only motivation, to love you. Not to get rich, not to get powerful, not to have circumstances work out the way we want, but to love you only. So God, help us as we move in that direction, as we long to see your face as the ultimate goal of life. We love you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. The guys are going to sing a song. And as we do, I just thinking of the Lord's Supper, the Last Supper. We want to remember God's sacrifice, Jesus' sacrifice, the righteous justice and mercy and connection with the Son of God that were experienced and explained in that moment, that time where he sat with his disciples in the room and explained what was going to happen. And it's so interesting how all of these elements are shown at that moment. At the beginning of Jesus' ministry is when he did the Sermon on the Mount. At the end, he's explaining how all this is going to happen. Show the reality of justice. He told Judas, there is justice. Don't do this. If you go ahead and do this, it'll be better than if you had never been born. And then he talks about mercy, the greatest sacrifice that has ever been given. Matthew 26 says this, that as they were eating, Jesus took some bread and he blessed it and he broke it into pieces. And we'll do this in just a moment. But he broke it into pieces and he gave it to the disciples saying, take this and eat it, for this is my body. Then he took a cup of wine and he gave thanks to God for it. And he gave that to them and he said, each of you drink from it, for this is my blood, which confirms the covenant between God and his people. It is poured out as a sacrifice to forgive the sins of many. That is the moment of mercy. His sacrifice, providing the forgiveness of sins, the punishment removed. And then he says, you know what, then you're going to see me. You're going to be there. He goes, mark my words, I will not drink this wine again until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. In just that one meal, we see justice, righteousness. We see the sacrifice that saved us all, the mercy that was offered to all of us, that allows us to offer mercy to others, and the fact that there is hope of connection completely with God face to face. Jesus, thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your love and your mercy that you expressed at that meal. And as we remember it, help us to remember that daily. Daily as we hunger and thirst for righteousness for us and justice for those around us, as we remember and our hope is in your mercy, and as we are so overwhelmed by that mercy, we offer it to others, that we help other people. We help them understand forgiveness as we express it to them, that they can then understand your forgiveness. And God, help us to desire nothing but seeing your face. Make that our top priority, to be 100% connected with you without impurity, to not add anything to it. Only you. God, help us as we move toward that this week. We thank you. We thank you so much for the death and resurrection of your Son. In Jesus' name, amen. Psalm 40:16. May all who search for you be filled with joy and gladness in you. May those who love your salvation repeatedly shout, the Lord is great. May we be a people who are satisfied by the pure love of God as we remember his great sacrifice, his life, and his mercy, and we look forward to seeing his face. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you next week.